Let's talk with Paul.
Hello, future LPDs, future pausers, and top notchers. I've been wanting to do this for a long time na sana. Kasi many of the reviewees personally message me na, sir, if possible, pwede akong gumawa ng content to explain different concepts and let na mas maintindihan nila. Napag-isip din ako, why not, di ba? If this is another way to be a service and add value to future LPDs, go lang. And siguro, may almost 8 years as national faculty and CBRC Mindanao Review Master for the Cloud Chart will be enough to prompt me to do this. So, here we go. Welcome to Let's Minute with Paul. Many let takers might have said before that you don't need to memorize yung mga names ng mga psychologists or famous name in the parlance of education. Kasi di naman siya lumalabas. Well, partly true, partly not. So if you will be taking the LET, what would be the right mindset to outsmart the board exam? Simply lang, lamang ang may alam. Yeah, you don't need to memorize, especially in Prof.Ed. I will not encourage you. However, I encourage you to have the kind of thinking na always in question like, how would this concept help me? Why is it important? How this theory put into practice? How this will help me understand the teaching learning process? Kasi ako yung teacher, so I must have the principles behind to explain the specific situation that is happening in the classroom. Example, why it is not right to teach grammar in preschool, why preschoolers are encouraged to hold bigger pencils, for what practice or for what purpose. So if you don't have prior knowledge about theories and principles to explain why, then you might rely on your intuition in choosing the right answer. So the goal in learning the theories and concepts is not to memorize or get familiarized, but certainly to get to analyze its implication into teaching. So in this episode, let's learn the concept of schema and the cognitive development theory of Jean Piaget. Basically, ano ba talaga ang cognitive development theory? Ano ba ang pinaka-core understanding natin ito? Simply, cognitive development theory is much more than the addition of new facts and ideas of an existing store of information. How does a child acquire knowledge? How does our thinking processes develop? According to Piaget, our thinking processes change radically, though slowly, from birth to maturity because we constantly strive to make sense of the world. Piaget identified 4 factors: biological, maturation, activity, social experiences, and equilibration that interact to influence changes in thinking. As a result of his early research in biology, Piaget concluded that all species inherent two basic tendency or invariant functions. The first of this tendency is toward organization. Ito ay ang pag-combine, arrange, recombine, and rearrange of behaviors and thoughts into coherent systems. The second tendency is toward adaptation or adjusting to the environment. People are born with tendency to organize their thinking processes into psychological structures. These psychological structures are our systems for understanding and interacting with the world. Simple structures are continually combined and coordinated to become more sophisticated and thus more effective. Very young infants, for example, can either look at an object or grasp it when it comes to contact with their hands. Piaget gave a special name of these structures. What we call is schemes or schema. In his theory, schemes are the basic building blocks of thinking. They are organized systems of actions or thought that allow us to mentally represent or think about the objects and events in our world. Ito yung schema natin. Ito yung prior knowledge or experience. As a person's thinking processes become more organized and new schemes develop, behavior also becomes more sophisticated and better suited to the environment. In addition to the tendency to organize psychological structures, people also inherit the tendency to adapt to their environment. 2 basic processes are involved in adaptation. Number 1 is assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation takes place when we use our existing schemes to make sense of events in our world. We interpret the world based on our existing models of the world. So assimilation involves trying to understand something new by fitting it into what we already know. For example, ang tawag ng bata sa 4-legged animals na palagi niyang nakikita ay dog or doggy. Now, nung dinala mo siya sa farm at nakakita siya ng animals na may apat na paa, ang itatawag niya doon ay still, dog, or doggy. Another is yung bata, pag nakakita ng hayop na lumilipad, ang itatawag niya doon ay bird. When you bring the child to the airport at nakakita siya ng lumilipad na bagay, she might call that as bird. Tatawag niya pa rin doon ay bird. They try to match the new experience with the existing scheme for identifying animals. That is assimilation. Accommodation occurs when we must change or modify existing schema to respond to a new situation. If we cannot make new data fit any existing schema, then we must develop more appropriate structures. We adjust our thinking to fit the new information instead of adjusting information to fit our thinking. Children demonstrate accommodation when they add the scheme for recognizing horses to their other systems for identifying four-legged animals. Same also na narealize ng bata na yung bagay na lumilipad sa airport ay walang feeders at hindi siya nagpa-flap ng wings. So, he modified by calling it a plane. So, that is the process of accommodation. According to Piaget, organizing, assimilating, and accommodating can be viewed as a kind of complex balancing act. In his theory, the actual changes in thinking take place through the process of equilibration, the act of searching for a balance. Piaget assumed that people continually test the adequacy of their thinking processes in order to achieve that balance. Briefly, the process of equilibration works like this. If we apply a particular scheme to an event or situation, and the scheme works, then equilibrium exists. If the scheme does not produce a satisfying result, then disequilibrium exists, and we become uncomfortable. This motivates us to keep searching for a solution through assimilation and accommodation, and thus our thinking changes and moves ahead. Now we turn to the actual differences that Piaget hypothesized for children as they grow. Piaget believed that all people pass through the same four stages in exactly the same order. The earliest period is called the sensory motor stage because the child's thinking involved seeing, hearing, moving, touching, tasting, and so on. In short, how I define sensory motor stage is senses plus motor activities. One feature of this stage is the understanding of the child that objects do not cease to exist when they are out of sight, or what we call object permanence. Object permanence simply means permanente ang bagay sa tingin ng bata. The object continues to exist even if it is hidden. The second stage of cognitive development theory is pre-operational. In this stage, the child develops language and begins to use symbols to represent objects, has difficulty with past and future, thinks in the present, can think through operations logically in one direction, but has difficulties understanding the point of view of another person. So here are the features of the pre-operational stage. Number one is animism. They believe that inanimate objects have human feelings, kaya often they would tell, "Ay mami, natutulog yung araw paggabi." Second is artificialism. Ito naman yung paniniwala ng bata na yung mga natural occurrences like flood, rain, earthquake ay gawa ng tao. Oh, there is a rainbow, mommy made that actually. Next feature is centration. It is the ability of the child to focus only in one aspect of an object. So, delimited lamang siya sa isang feature ng bagay. Like, pag pinhawakan mo sa kanya yung stone and ask him, anong nakikita mo or napapansin mo while holding the stone? The child will tell, matigas siya, teacher. So, di niya nakikita pa ito ay mabigat or magaan, have rough features, etc. Next feature of this stage is what we call egocentrism. Ito yung point of view or POV na isang bata is only focused on himself. The concept of egocentrism, as Piaget, does not mean selfish. It simply means children often assume that everyone else shares their feelings, reactions, and perspectives. For example, if a little boy at this stage is afraid of dogs, he may assume that all children share this fear. Very young children center on their own perceptions and on the way the situation appears to them. This is one reason it is difficult for pre-operational children to understand that your right hand is not on the same side as theirs when you are facing them. So, pag tinanong mo yung 2 years old sa restaurant na palagi nilang kinakainan, sasabihin lang niya, gaya kahapon. Kasi iniisip niya na naiisip mo yung iniisip niya. Gets? The next feature of pre-operational is what we call symbolic fashioning, or the ability of the child to name objects and events. If you can imagine a classic situation where the children would play bahay-bahayan and they would play different roles, tapos may konsepto sila ng bintahan, and what is their mode of payment is money, right? Pero yung pera ay dahon o leaves of a tree in the area. Ang pinakamaganda pa noon is the bigger the leaves, the bigger the value. This implies actually part of language development of the child. The next thing is irreversibility. This is the inability of the child to see the process or inability to rethink the process. Example, if you allow the kindergarten to choose between the 50 peso coins sa 100 peso bill, the kid would actually prefer the 50 peso coins. That shows irreversibility. The next thing is transductive reasoning naman, is the ability of the child to see the cause and effect relationships, or simply illogical yung thoughts ng bata. A is always equals to B. Pag ang bata nakarinig ng tahol ng aso tapos may nagpop na balloon, he would think that every time na tumatahol ang aso, may nagpapop na balloon. So he has no idea that A could possibly result to C. The third stage in cognitive development theory is concrete operational. Begins about first grade to early adolescence, around 11 years old. The child in this stage can think logically about concrete, hands-on problems, understands conservation and organizes things into categories and in series, can reverse thinking to mentally undo actions, understands past, present, and future. Piaget coined the term concrete operations to describe the stage of hands-on thinking. The basic characteristics of the stage are the recognition of the logical stability of the physical world, the realization that elements can be changed or transformed and still conserve many of their original characteristics, and the understanding that these changes can be reversed. The first feature or characteristic of this stage is conservation. It is the principle that the amount or number of something remains the same, even the arrangement or appearance is changed, as long as nothing is added and nothing is taken away. Alam ng bata na yung 2 glasses of water na pariw ang laman in a wide shape, tapos binago mo, nilipat mo sa mas mahaba, he knows that the amount is still the same. Another important operation mastered at this stage is what we call classification. Classification depends on a student's ability to focus on a single characteristics of objects in a set and group the objects according to that characteristic. The student understands, for example, that buttons can be classified by color and then reclassified by size or by the number of holes. The next feature is what we call seriation. Seriation is the process of making an orderly arrangement from large to small or vice versa. This understanding of sequential relationships permits a student to construct a logical series in which A is less than B, is less than C, and so on. The last feature in this stage is what we call decentering. Ito yung kabaliktaran ng centration. Decentering means the child has the ability to identify different features or dimensions of an object. Alam niya na there is hardness in stone or elasticity in a rubber. Finally, the last stage of cognitive development theory is formal operational. In this stage, the learner can think hypothetically and deductively. Thinking becomes more scientific, solves abstract problems in logical fashion, can consider multiple perspectives, and develops concerns about social issues, personal identity, and justice. Using formal operations is a new way of reasoning that involves thinking about thinking or mental operations on mental operations. For example, the child using concrete operations can categorize animals by their physical characteristics or by their habitats, but a child using formal operations can perform second-order operations on these category operations to infer relationships between habitat and physical characteristics, such as understanding that the physical characteristics of thick fur on animals is related to their Arctic habitats. Abstract operational thinking is necessary for success in many advanced high school and college courses. For example, most math is concerned with hypothetical situations, assumptions, and givens. Example, let x is equals to 10, or assume x squared plus y squared is equals to z squared, or given two sides in adjacent angle. Work in social studies and literature requires abstract thinking too. Example, what did Wilson mean when he called World War I the war to end all wars? What are some metaphors for hope and despair in Shakespeare's sonnets? What symbols of old age does T.S. Eliot use in The Wasteland? How do animals symbolize human character and traits in Aesop fables? And that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. You can download my note and handouts on my Gumroad account. There will be also let clencher for you to answer to assess yourself. And don't worry, I will post this video also there. I would really love it if you care to share, follow for more episodes, and comment the topics or concepts you want me to discuss or explain next. Thank you. Have a great day, future LPDs, passer, and top-notchers.
Let's talk with Paul.